Chapter 5. Oh, never know these frightful dreams, my dear Svetlana. Zhukovsky. The fall that year was in no hurry, and nature seemed to wait and wait for winter. Then, in January, the second night, the snow fell late. Next day, as dawn was just advancing, Tatiana woke, and idly glancing, beheld outdoors a wondrous sight. The roofs, the yard, the fence, all white, each pane a fragile pattern showing, the trees in winter silver-dyed, gay magpies on the lawn outside, and all the hilltops soft and glowing with winter's brilliant rug of snow, the world all fresh and white below. Ah, winter time! The peasant, cheerful, creates a passage with his sleigh. Aware of snow, his nag is fearful, but shambles somehow down the way. A bold kibitka skips and burrows and ploughs a trail of fluffy furrows. The driver sits behind the dash in sheepskin coat and scarlet sash. And here's a household boy gone sleighing, his blackie seated on the sled, while he plays horse and runs ahead. The rascal froze his fingers playing, and laughs out loud between his howls, while through the glass his mother scowls. But you, perhaps, are not attracted by pictures of this simple kind, where lowly nature is enacted and nothing grand or more refined. Warmed by the god of inspiration, another bard in exaltation has painted us the snow new laid and winter's joys in every shade. I'm sure you'll find him most engaging when he in flaming verse portrays clandestine rides in dashing sleighs. But I have no intent of waging a contest for his crown, or thine, thou bard of Finland's maid divine. Tatiana, with a Russian duty that held her heart she knew not why, profoundly loved in its cold beauty the Russian winter passing by. Crisp days when sunlit hoarfrost glimmers, the sleighs and rosy snow that shimmers in sunset's glow, the murky light that wraps about the Yuletide night, those Twelfth-tide eves by old tradition were marked at home on their estate. The servant maids would guess the fate of both young girls with superstition. Each year they promised, as before, 2 soldier husbands and a war. Tatiana heeded with conviction all ancient folklore night and noon, believed in dreams and card prediction, and read the future by the moon. All signs and portents quite alarmed her. All objects either scared or charmed her with secret meanings they'd impart. Forebodings filled and pressed her heart. If her prim tomcat sat protected atop the stove to wash and purr, then this was certain sign to her that guests were soon to be expected. Or if upon her left she'd spy a waxing crescent moon on high, her face would pale, her teeth would chatter. Or when a shooting star flew by to light the sombre sky and shatter in fiery dust before her eye, she'd hurry and in agitation before the star's disintegration would whisper it her secret prayer. Or if she happened anywhere to meet a black-robed monk by error, or if amid the fields one day a fleeing hare would cross her way, she'd be quite overcome with terror as dark forebodings filled her mind of some misfortune ill-defined. Yet even in these same afflictions she found a secret charm in part, for nature, fond of contradictions, has so designed the human heart. The holy days are here. What gladness! Bright youth divines, not knowing sadness, with nothing that it must regret, with all of life before it yet, a distant, luminous and boundless. Old age divines with glasses on, and sees the grave before it yawn, all thoughts of time returning, groundless. No matter, childish hope appears to murmur lies in aged ears. Tatiana watches, fascinated, the molten wax submerge and turn to wondrous shapes, which designated some wondrous thing that she would learn. Then from a basin filled with water their rings are drawn in random order. When Tanya's ring turned up at last, the song they sang was from the past. The peasants there have hoards of treasure. They spade up silver from a ditch. The one we sing to will be rich and famous. But the plaintive measure foretells a death to come ere long, and girls prefer the kitty's song. A frosty night, the sky resplendent as heaven's galaxy shines down and glides, so peaceful and transcendent, Tatiana, in her low-cut gown, steps out of doors and trains a mirror upon the moon to bring it nearer. But all that shows in her dark glass is just the trembling moon, alas. What's that? The crunching snow. Who's coming? She flits on tiptoe with a sigh and asks the stranger passing by, her voice more soft than reed pipes humming. "Oh, what's your name?" He hurries on, looks back and answers, "Agathon." Tatiana, as her nurse suggested, prepared to conjure all night through, and so in secret she requested the bathhouse table laid for two. But then sheer terror seized Tatiana, and I, recalling poor Svetlana, feel frightened too. So let it go. We'll not have Tanya conjure so. Instead, her silken sash untying, she just undressed and went to bed. Sweet lay now floats above her head, while 'neath her downy pillow lying, a maiden's looking-glass she keeps. Now all is hushed. Tatiana sleeps. And what an awesome dream she's dreaming! She walks upon a snowy dale, and all around her, dully gleaming, sad mist and murky gloom prevail. Amid the drifting snowbound spaces, a dark and seething torrent races, a hoary frothing wave that strains and tears asunder winter's chains. Two slender, ice-bound poles lie linking the chasm's banks atop the ridge, a perilous and shaky bridge. And full of doubt, her spirit sinking, Tatiana stopped in sudden dread before the raging gulf ahead. As at a vexing separation, Tatiana murmured at a loss. She saw no friendly soul on station to lend a hand to help her cross. But suddenly a snowbank shifted, and who emerged when it was lifted? A huge and matted bear appeared. Tatiana screamed. He growled and reared, then stretched a paw, sharp claws abhorrent to Tanya, who could barely stand. She took it with a trembling hand and worked her way across the torrent with apprehensive step, then fled. The bear just followed where she led. She dare not look to see behind her, and ever faster on she reels. At every turn he seems to find her, that shaggy footman at her heels. The grunting, loathsome bear still lumbers. Before them now a forest slumbers. The pines in all their beauty frown, and barely stir, all weighted down by clumps of snow. And through the summits of naked linden, birch, and ash, the beams from heaven's lanterns flash. There is no path. The gorge that plummets, the shrubs, the land, all lie asleep by snowy blizzards buried deep. She's reached the wood, the bear still tracking. Soft snow, knee-deep, lies all about. A jutting branch looms up attacking, and tears her golden earrings out. And now another tries to trip her, and from one charming foot her slipper all wet comes off in crumbly snow. And now she feels her kerchief go. She lets it lie. She mustn't linger. Behind her back she hears the bear, but shy and frightened, does not dare to lift her skirt with trembling finger. She runs, but he keeps crashing on, until at last her strength is gone. She sinks in snow. The bear alertly just picks her up and rushes on. She lies within his arms inertly. Her breathing stops. All sense is gone. Along a forest road he surges, and then, mid-trees, a hut emerges. Dense brush abounds. On every hand forlorn and drifting snowbanks stand. A tiny window glitters brightly, and from the hut come cries and din. The bear proclaims, "My gossip's in." "Come warm yourself," he adds politely, then pushes straightway through the door and lays her down upon the floor. On coming to, she looks around her. She's in a hall. No bear, at least. The clink of glasses, shouts, confound her, as if it were some funeral feast. She can't make sense of what she's hearing, creeps to the door, and, softly peering, sees through a crack the strangest thing. A horde of monsters in a ring. Out of a dog face, horns are sprouting. One has a rooster's head on top. A goateed witch is on a mop. A haughty skeleton sits pouting beside a short-tailed dwarf, and that is half a crane and half a cat. More wondrous still, and still more fearful, a crab upon a spider sat. On goose's neck a skull seemed cheerful, while spinning round in bright red hat. A windmill there was, squat-jig dancing, and cracked and waved its sails while prancing, guffawing, barking, whistles, claps, and human speech, and hoof-beat taps. But what was Tanya's stunned reaction when mid the guests she recognized the one she feared, the one she prized, the hero of our novel's action. Onegin sits amid the roar and glances slyly through the door. He gives a sign. The others hustle. He drinks. All drink, and all grow shrill. He laughs. They all guffaw and bustle. He frowns, and all of them grow still. He's master here, there's no mistaking. And Tanya, now no longer quaking, turns curious to see still more, and pushes slightly on the door. The sudden gust of wind surprises the band of goblins, putting out the nighttime lanterns all about. His eyes aflame. Onegin rises and strikes his chair against the floor. All rise. He marches to the door. And fear assails her. In a panic she tries to flee, but feels too weak. In anguished writhing, almost manic, she wants to scream, but cannot speak. Eugene throws wide the door, revealing to monstrous looks and hellish squealing her slender form. Fierce cackles sound in savage glee. All eyes turn round, all hooves and trunks, grotesque and curving, and whiskers, tusks, and tufted tails, red bloody tongues and snouts and nails, huge horns and bony fingers swerving, all point at her, and all combine to shout as one, "She's mine! She's mine!" "She's mine," announced Eugene, commanding. And all the monsters fled the room. The maid alone was left there standing, with him amid the frosty gloom. Onegin stares at her intently, then draws her to a corner gently, and lays her on a makeshift bed, and on her shoulder rests his head. Then Olga enters in confusion, and Lenski too. A light shines out. Onegin lifts an arm to rout unbidden guests for their intrusion. He rants at them, his eyes turn dread. Tatiana lies there, nearly dead. The heated words grow louder, quicken. Onegin snatches up a knife, and Lenski falls. The shadows thicken. A rending cry amid the strife reverberates. The cabin quivers. Gone numb with terror, Tanya shivers and wakes to find her room alight, the frozen windows sparkling bright, where dawn's vermilion rays are playing. Then Olga pushes through the door, more rosy than the dawn before, and lighter than a swallow, saying, "Oh, tell me, do, Tatiana, love, who was it you were dreaming of?" But she ignores her sister's pleading, just lies in bed without a word, keeps leafing through some book she's reading, so wrapped in thought she hasn't heard. Although the book she read presented no lines a poet had invented, no sapient truths, no pretty scenes, yet neither Virgil's, nor Racine's, nor Seneca's, nor Byron's pages, nor even fashion plates displayed, had ever so engrossed a maid. She read, my friends, that king of sages, Martin Zadek, Chaldean seer, and analyst of dreams unclear. This noble and profound creation a roving peddler one day brought to show them in their isolation, and finally left it when they bought Malvina for 3 rubles 50, a broken set, but he was thrifty, and in exchange he also took 2 Petriads, a grammar book, some fables he could sell tomorrow, plus Marmontel, just volume 3. Martin Zadek soon came to be Tatiana's favourite. Now when sorrow assails her heart, he brings her light, and sleeps beside her through the night. Her dream disturbs her, and not knowing what secret message she had been sent, Tatiana seeks some passage showing just what the dreadful vision meant. She finds, in alphabetic order, what clues the index can afford her. There's bear and blizzard, bridge and crow, fir, forest, hedgehog, night and snow, and many more. But her confusion Martin Zadek cannot dispel. The frightful vision must foretell sad times to come and disillusion. For several days she couldn't find a way to calm her troubled mind. But lo! With crimson hand Aurora leads forth from morning dales the sun, and brings in merry mood before her the name-day feast that's just begun. Since dawn, Dame Larin's near relations have filled the house. Whole congregations of neighbour clans have come in drays, kibitkas, britskas, coaches, sleighs. The hall is full of crowds and bustle. The drawing-room explodes with noise, with bark of pugs and maidens' joys, with laughter, kisses, din and hustle. The guests all bow and scrape their feet, wet nurses shout and babies bleat. Fat Pustyakov, the local charmer, has come and brought his portly wife. Gvozdin as well, that model farmer, whose peasants lead a wretched life. The 2 Skotinins, grey as sages, with children of all shapes and ages, from 2 to 30 at the top. Here's Petushkov, the district fop, and my first cousin, good Buyanov, lint-covered in his visored cap, as you of course well know the chap, and former councillor old man Flyanov, a rogue and gossip night and noon, a glutton, grafter and buffoon. The Harlikovs were feeling mellow, and brought along Monsieur Triquet, late from Tambov, a witty fellow in russet wig and fine pince-nez. True Gaul, Triquet in pocket carried a verse to warn that Tanya tarried, set to a children's melody, Réveillez-vous, belle endormie. The printed verse had lain neglected in some old tattered almanac, until Triquet, who had a knack for rhyme, saw fit to resurrect it, and boldly put for Belle Nina the charming line, Belle Tatiana. And now from nearby quarters, brothers, that idol whom ripe misses cheer, the joy and hope of district mothers, the company commander's here. He's brought some news to set them cheering, the regimental band's appearing. The colonel's sending it tonight, there'll be a ball, what sheer delight! The girls all jump and grow excited, but dinner's served, and so by pairs and arm in arm they seek their chairs. The girls near Tanya, men delighted to face them, and amid the din all cross themselves and dig right in. Then, for a moment, chatter ceases as mouths start chewing. All around, the clink of plates and forks increases, the glasses jingle and resound, but soon the guests are somewhat sated. The hubbub grows more animated, but no one hears his neighbour out. All laugh and argue, squeal and shout. The doors fly back. 2 figures enter. It's Lenski with Eugene. "Oh, dear," the hostess cries, "at last you're here." The guests all squeeze toward the centre, each moves his setting, shifts his chair, and in a trice they seat the pair. Across from Tanya, there they place them, and paler than the moon at dawn, she cannot raise her eyes to face them, and trembles like a hunted fawn. Inside her, stormy passions seething, the wretched girl is scarcely breathing. The two friends' greetings pass unheard. Her tears well up without a word and almost fall. The poor thing's ready to faint, but deep within her, will and strength of mind were working still, and they prevailed. Her lips more steady, she murmured something through her pain, and managed somehow to remain. All tragico-hysteric moaning, all girlish fainting fits and tears had long since set Eugene to groaning. He had borne enough in former years. Already cross and irritated by being at this feast he hated, and noting how poor Tanya shook, he barely hid his angry look and fumed in sullen indignation. He swore that he'd make Lenski pay and be avenged that very day. Exulting in anticipation, he inwardly began to draw caricatures of those he saw. Some others, too, might well have noted poor Tanya's plight, but every eye was at the time in full devoted to sizing up a lavish pie, alas, too salty. Now they're bringing in bottle with the pitch still clinging between the meat and blanc-manger, Tsimliansky wine, a whole array of long-stemmed glasses, quite as slender as your dear waist, my sweet Zizi, fair crystal of my soul and key to all my youthful verses tender, love's luring phial, you who once made me a drunken, love-filled dunce. The bottle pops, as cork goes flying, the fizzing wine comes gushing fast, and now with solemn mien, and dying to have his couplet heard at last, Triquet stands up. The congregation falls silent in anticipation. Tatiana's scarce alive. Triquet, with verse in hand, looks Tanya's way and starts to sing, off-key. Loud cheering and claps salute him. Tanya feels constrained to curtsy, almost reels. The bard, whose modesty's endearing, is first to toast her where he stands, then puts his couplet in her hands. Now greetings come, congratulations. Tatiana thanks them for the day, but when Eugene's felicitations came due in turn, the girl's dismay, her weariness and helpless languor evoked his pity more than anger. He bowed to her in silence grave, but somehow just the look he gave was wondrous tender. If asserting some feeling for Tatiana's lot, or if, unconsciously or not, he'd only teased her with some flirting, his look was still a tender dart. It reawakened Tanya's heart. The chairs, pushed back, gave out a clatter. The crowd moves on to drawing-room. Thus bees from luscious hive will scatter a noisy swarm to meadow bloom. Their festive dinner, all too pleasing, the squires face each other wheezing. The ladies to the hearth repair, the maidens whisper by the stair. At Green Bay's tables players settle, as Boston, ombre, old men's play, and whist, which reigns supreme today, call out for men to try their mettle. A family with a single creed, all sons of boredom's endless greed. Whist's heroes have by now completed 8 rubbers, and 8 times as well they've shifted round and been reseated. Now tea is brought. I like to tell the time of day by teas and dinners, by supper's call. We country sinners can tell the time without great fuss. The stomach serves as clock for us. And apropos, I might make mention in passing that I speak as much of feasts and foods and corks and such in these odd lines of my invention as you, great Homer, you whose song has lasted 30 centuries long. But tea is brought. The girls, demurely, have scarcely taken cups in hand, when suddenly, from ballroom doorway, bassoon and flute announce the band. Elated by the music's bouncing, his tea and rum at once renouncing, that Paris of the local towns good Petushkov to Olga bounds. To Tanya Lenski, Harlikova, a maiden somewhat ripe in glow, my Tambov poet takes in tow. Buyanov whirls off Pustyakova, then all the crowd comes pouring in to watch the brilliant ballroom spin. At the beginning of my story, in chapter 1, if you recall, I wanted, with Albani's glory, to paint a Petersburg grand ball. But then, by empty dreams deflected, I lost my way, and recollected the feet of ladies known before. In your slim tracks I'll stray no more, O charming feet and mad affliction. My youth betrayed, it's time to show more common sense if I'm to grow, to mend my ways in deeds and diction, and cleanse this chapter 5 at last of all digressions from the past. Monotonous and mad procession, young life's own whirlwind, full of sound, each pair a blur in quick succession, the rousing waltz goes whirling round. His moment of revenge beginning, Eugene, with secret malice grinning, approaches Olga, idly jests, then spins her round before the guests. He stays beside her when she's seated, proceeds to talk of this and that. 2 minutes barely has she sat, and then their waltzing is repeated. The guests all stare in mute surprise. Poor Lenski can't believe his eyes. Now the mazurka's call is sounded. Its thunder once could even rack the greatest hall when it resounded, and under heels parquet would crack. The very windows shook like Hades. But now it's changed, we're all like ladies, and o'er the lacquered boards we glide. But in small town and countryside, the old mazurka hasn't faltered. It still retains its pristine joys. Moustaches, leaps, heel-pounding noise remain the same. They've not been altered by tyrant fashion's high decrees, the modern Russian's new disease. My bold Buyanov guides expertly Tatyana to our hero's side, and Olga too. Eugene alertly makes off with Lenski's future bride. He steers her, gliding nonchalantly, and bending whispers her gallantly some common madrigal to please, then gives her hand a gentle squeeze. She blushes in appreciation, her prim, conceited face alight, while Lenski rages at the sight. Consumed with jealous indignation, he waits till the mazurka's through, then asks her for the dance he's due. But no, she can't. What explanation? Well, she's just promised his good friend the next dance too. In God's creation! What's this he hears? Could she intend? Can this be real? Scarce more than swaddler and turned coquette, a fickle toddler. Already has she mastered guile, already learned to cheat and smile. The blow has left poor Lenski shattered, and cursing woman's crooked course, he leaves abruptly, calls for horse, and gallops off. Now nothing mattered. A brace of pistols and a shot shall instantly decide his lot.